Welcome to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show podcast. Before we get started, we'd like to extend special thanks to all the sponsors of the Myth Information Conference 3 coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in Milwaukee. Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research, author of the new book Mythos Christos, Edwin Herbert, Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, and the Atheist Community of Milwaukee. Your $300 sponsorship includes a table at the conference, 1 ticket to the event, and 1 ticket to the VIP party, as well as a mention on all of our various social media platforms, including this fine podcast. Buy your tickets and sponsorships at mythicistmilwaukee.com. All of us here at Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank all of our patrons for supporting this show. And now here's your hosts, Rob Moore and Brian Edward. Well, thanks for joining us again, everybody. It's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. I'm Rob Moore, the Deacon of Doubt in these parts, and the Secularinx. You can find me at secularinx.com. You see what I did there? I mixed secular and larynx.
That's not an actual website.
Voice box. It is a website. No, it is. You can look it up. Secularinx.com. My co-host is not with us. He's living the life of Brian off in the lake country, having a good old time while we're here at work doing the dirty work for the secular movement. So joining me is the minister of mythicism. He's Sean Frasick. What's up, Sean?
Not much. Glad to be here.
We always have as well the Mythmeister himself. He is Antonio Desconocido. What's up, Antonio?
Muchas gracias. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
De nada.
I feel warm all over.
De nada. He's the Nicaraguan nightmare. He's going to throw down today as we podcast, as always, here from downtown Milwaukee. It's the Grand Avenue Mall, and I don't pay enough tribute to our host here at the Milwaukee Cooperative Space, and we appreciate everything that they do down here in beautiful downtown Cream City. It's the summer. It's State Fair. I took in the State Fair yesterday, had me a cream puff.
Yeah.
Had me some of the local flavor. You guys go to the State Fair at all, Sean?
No, I don't typically. I don't really enjoy the smell of pig poop.
Are you speaking of the food, the animals and the livestock, or the patrons? Which of the three pigs could you be referring to? No, I tease, of course. We love our hometown Wisconsin crowd, but there's not a lot of secularists within it, and we are those people here. So we do a lot of hard work, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of team members who throw down and kind of shine a light on the secular movement here in Milwaukee, and have actually made ourselves a little bit of a name. Not to brag too much, but we do have our irons and a lot of irons in our fire, and we need help. So right away, we want to ask people to help support us by going to Patreon and pledging a damn $1 for this fine podcast so that we can keep doing it.
We're up to $16 an episode.
Nice, man. And I'll probably do that myself. It might be a little self-motivating thing. I can make $1 off my own $1.
Yeah, there you go.
Just to get it up to 17. I think it's a nice number. But we have Guillermo Zingrone from Old Italy with us today. He's our old friend and a friend of the movement and a local guy. Made the drive up. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got it, man. He is a professor. He's college instructor. Thank you, and he has a PhD in psychological development. Is that right?
Developmental psychology.
Developmental psychology, and already makes him smarter than me. But I didn't know that you were into that. Your emphasis was on cognitive. Tell us what it is.
Cognitive evolution was my main interest. I got into developmental psych almost as a sideline. I was taking psych and philosophy courses, trying to figure out how we evolved our unique cognitive capabilities. And the more psych I took, it made sense to be in developmental psych and look at cognitive development of children. You get a real good idea how you go from an infant that can't recognize its own name and can't focus to a 5-year-old that has a phenomenal self-concept and language and things that no chimpanzee ever has. So studying cognitive development made sense.
That's got to be fascinating work, and it leads us right to a great question. How dangerous is the faith tradition to developing minds?
I think it's awful. I think child indoctrination is probably, if not the worst, one of the top 5 things that religions do that is just awful. There's even studies coming out nowadays that show that believing in a religion can diminish your capacity for critical thinking later. And what I dislike most about it is little kids are wired to listen to adults. They look at adults as authorities. And so you can tell them these crazy myths that you guys are busting all over the place. And the little kid buys it because, well, mom and dad wouldn't lie to me and preacher wouldn't lie to me. And then we got to clean up the mess later when they're adults, right?
Yeah, it's right in the scripture too. It's like a built-in safe measure for those who wrote the Bible to put that one commandment in: honor thy mother and father. It kind of says, even if there's a doubt there, just believe what your parents said. The book's true because it said it's true. But beyond that, if your parents said it's true, don't dare question.
Yeah. Kids are little learning machines, and they're just sucking in information from their environment. It's fascinating to study. But the problem is then you can feed them a lot of nonsense. They just don't have the capacity to question yet. Most of what they get in the environment is good, realistic pattern recognition. They learn language just by listening to it. They learn most of what they learn just by observing. So then when you feed them these myths in any culture, whether it's Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, whatever, they take that in just like everything else. Then they find out later, oh, this might be nonsense, but then they're emotionally invested, and it's tough, right, to get out. That's what we're all about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of the organizations, and we've had experience with one in Milwaukee where it was a free after-school program. It was like a dance instructor, dance, whatever, you send your kids there to learn to dance. But one of the things they did was they prayed at the end of every class. Now, their caveat was that not all kids had to pray if they didn't want to. But just, I think of myself in that situation where peer pressure takes over. If you see everyone else doing it, are you really going to be the kid that says no?
Yeah, there's so much that I teach just in basic intro to psych about social psychology pressures. We are such social animals, and it starts with little kids. It's tough, even as an adult, not to do what the rest of the group is doing. So if they say, well, the kid really doesn't have to pray, yeah, right. That doesn't even work with adults. When we walk into a new room in a new situation, we immediately social reference and look at everybody else in the room for, oh, what am I supposed to be doing? So it's even tougher on kids. Wow.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This fell on me yesterday with the cleanup.
It amounts to socially accepted child abuse, in my opinion. It is. It's not too strong of a wording.
No, Lawrence Krauss has said that very plainly. Some other of our people in our movement thought that was too strong a word. I'm right there with him. I think it's child abuse. You don't have to beat a kid or neglect a kid. If you tell them just complete nonsense, and then especially keep them away from alternate information, like homeschool them so they can't.
Right.
That's just, you're abusing the child. You're setting them up later to find out, wait a minute, is this true what I was taught?
Right. And I think if you're going to teach one, and this is the argument we've had many times, is if you're going to teach one, why not teach them all? Yep. Why not show them all? Why not say, there's all of these creation stories, creation myths. Why focus on the, Judeo-Christian
It's
version?
like such an old cultural habit that's worldwide, and we're finally questioning it. That's the good part, where you just go ahead and you teach your kids whatever religion you were taught. And most of the people that are teaching you, they're not outright lying to you. They're just passing on the same belief.
Right, they believe it, right.
Yeah, they buy it too because they never questioned it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that, if there's any empathy on your end for parents that really believe this and pass it on to their children, because it seems that it's much worse for a situation to be where a parent knows it's a complete lie, but then is building into the child to completely, do everything they can to believe it. It almost seems like the target audience for us really isn't even at the parent level. It's at the leadership, the religious movement leadership, up all the way up into the Vatican and, the mosques, out in the Middle East.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we have to attack it at all levels. And, to answer your first question, the average parent just belies it too. They buy the story because that's what they were taught as a kid, and they haven't really looked at it. You have some parents that know it's probably nonsense, and then they keep their kid from any other info. So I'm less sympathetic to them, but the average Christian, you guys have run into this a million times, right? The average Christian doesn't know anything about their own belief. They haven't
much
read
less
the Bible.
others. Much less others.
And Islam is even worse because the average Muslim doesn't even read their book in their own language. They don't read Arabic, so they don't even know the prayers they're doing every day.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I think when it comes to parents, one of the things, even if they don't believe fully in the Bible and all of its messages or the Quran or whatever, they still feel that it's a good tool that teaches morality, and that is one thing that we've been trying to show that no, it actually doesn't teach morality.
No. That's the con job. That's what's like accepted in our culture. Well, you need religion for morality. And all of us secularists are out here going, no.
Right.
In fact, it gets in the way.
The answer to me is simple. The implementing of it will be impossible, and certainly in my lifetime. But we need to teach elementary school kids basic philosophy, world philosophy, like you might have had in a good high school. You might have had a religion class that was basically a class where you learned all world religions, an overview, as it were. The little kids are not. As soon as you're getting into second, third, you're not too young to learn all the other mythologies. They teach you a couple of neat ones. You might have a Greek mythology class. You might learn something about Odin and Thor here and there. But let's have one where they have all of them.
Right.
Philosophies, religious, mythological, and the comparative and parallels between said mythologies and religions. And then let the kids make up their own mind. You want to delude yourself when you're an adult? More power to you, but stop lying to society's future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at social studies, when you talk about ancient Egypt, you're taught about the papyrus or the pyramids, but they never really get into the beliefs or the gods or the traditions or the fact that they baptize or the fact that they had all of these gods that were similar to what we know.
Very superficial.
Yep.
Which were probably the driving factors of all of that, happening in their culture. It's probably what moved the culture, in addition to the labor to, construct these pyramids out there and other structures, which, again, were aligned to constellations and celestial, stars and figures. It's like putting a blinders to what the society is really about.
Right.
It's like we see the after effects. You see like you said, the papyrus. We have the evidence for that. Let's talk about that.
No.
Why don't we talk about what the people actually did and believed? And
it gets even worse when you have presidential candidates stating that the pyramids were there as granaries. And it's clearly not the case when you read
very true.
Yeah, you can just read the hieroglyphs and you understand exactly what they were built as. But I'm forgetting his name right now. Who's
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson
Thank you.
said that?
Thank you. Yeah,
Nice.
they're built as granaries.
I have a whole section in my book on Ben, not about the pyramid thing. It's ludicrous enough, but about his comments on gays and stuff like that. And that's what happens when you're in a really strong religion. You already have the truth. You've got it from your Bible and what you're taught. So even a guy who's as smart as him and who was an excellent pediatric neurosurgeon, he's great in that avenue. But then he doesn't look at the data outside when it comes to his religious beliefs. And he could have a 2-minute conversation with any archaeologist anywhere that would completely dispel that idiot idea that the pyramids were somehow a granary storage and then built by Joseph or something.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Gotta love it.
I'm flabbergasted. I can't. I did not know that, and I can't. I can't even think of a joke for that. The granary? Imagine moving those blocks to store grain.
Yeah, and there's like 2 or 3 little passages out of 14 acres of blocks that are like 30 feet wide and 100 feet long, and they're on like a 60-degree angle. Now, it's a lot of stone for
a little overkill.
0.1% of somehow storage. It's insane.
And these people still feel that they were built by Jewish slaves, and that the Exodus is actually a historical event. So
that's another whole.
It's all of it.
Yeah, that's another thing you lie to kids about.
Or ancient aliens.
Or ancient aliens.
Yeah.
So what do we know we suck in schools. What are we doing right? You were at the Reason Rally recently. We saw you there. And
that was excellent. That was my first one. I did not go to 2012? That was the first thing. And, I heard a lot of people say, there weren't as many people there. Or there weren't this and that. I was just flabbergasted. It was fantastic. It was our second one, number one. It could have died at one, right?
Right.
And we had a second one. We had 10,000 plus people, whatever the exact number was, great speakers. And just as important to me, I'm chair of the Secular Coalition for America in Illinois. I went to the SCA advocacy days the day before. 300 of us secular scum crawled all over the representatives' offices in Congress and introduced ourselves as secularists, and we were pushing a reproductive education bill, a sex ed bill. To me, just those two events, I was just like, this is awesome. This wouldn't happen when I was a kid. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really been a different thing the last few years when seeing the coalescing of the different groups coming together. But as you mentioned, you are president of the Illinois chapter of the SECCO, or what's the actual title?
Yeah, Secular Coalition for America. Each state has a chapter they're trying to get off the ground, and I volunteered to be the Illinois chair about a year ago. Yeah.
Now, that's the lobbying group in Congress. Some may not know the Secular Coalition, unlike a lot of these other coalitions, has a real defined purpose. And when the secular community needs laws and other legislation lobbied in Washington, it's the Secular Coalition for America that does that, right?
Yeah, the SCA was formed as a lobbying group. The founding members and the voting members are all the atheist and secular organizations we all know and love: American Atheists, American Humanists, FFRF, Richard Dawkins Foundation. I can go down the list.
Methodist Milwaukee.
There's about I forgot you guys too. But you weren't the founders. You weren't there.
Right.
You're not old enough.
Right.
Well, maybe Rob is, but you're not old enough. Hey, right? But they're they do all the lobbying, and FFRF does the legal work on the separation of church
Filing
and
lawsuits,
state.
sure.
Yeah, and so they've got a great staff out in Washington. They're doing a bang-up job on the federal level, and they're trying to get us all active at the state levels. So we're going to visit our state reps. We're going to do a lobby day in Springfield, Illinois, our capital, in March, and visit all our legislators. And I can guarantee you it'll be the first time they ever had a secular group come visit them.
So you just answered my question. That then on the state level, then the states will go and lobby the state government.
Yep.
That's really how it.
And we do like a legislative watch all year and keep an eye on any legislation that comes up that should be commented on either for or against separation of church and state. And we're building our email list. People get an action alert and say, hey, write your congressman. What's great about the SCA, they just use your zip code and they hand you your state or your federal rep and say, here, if you agree with what we're talking about, press here and send them an email. So we're really trying to build that grassroots effort.
Now, while there's a difference between prosecution, not persecution, on the FFRF angle, and lobbying from your end,
yes,
is there a partnership between the two organizations that exists, maybe even if it's within closed doors, where agreements come into play, or where you guys help support each other?
Yes. In fact, I was just up there talking to Dan Barker and Annie Laurie about that, because we're looking for a Wisconsin chair for SCA. And FFRF occasionally does some legislative action alerts, but it's not their main focus.
Right. They have to stay
busy enough.
That's
yeah.
not
They have to
their
stay
thing.
neutral as
Exactly.
well. Right.
So they're kind of a complement to what we do, and they're one of the original members and a voting member on the, So we're a complementary team. One of my pitches when I'm out pushing my book down the road here to all secularists is going to be, hey, if you're a secularist at all, you ought to belong to both organizations. You got the lobbying covered with SCA, and they represent all of us. And then if you ought to belong to the FFRF and support their efforts in keeping First Amendment issues where they should be. So, yeah.
So how do we support your organization?
SCA, there's two ways, really. Number one, you can go to www.secular.org and sign up for action alerts in your state and at the federal level. So all you're going to do is put your name, address, and email and your zip code in there, and that's it. And then there's a donation page as well, and they have about a $25 a year annual membership now. So it's just like FFRF or anything else. And $25 isn't bad for getting really high-class Washington lobbying going on. It's fantastic. So
tell us about Wisconsin. You're searching for someone. There's no nobody.
Yeah,
doing
they
it
had
now.
a chair a while ago, and then I think it kind of petered out, and they don't have anybody right now. And I'm going to be doing a mailing and some other things to, let's say, Wisconsin meetup groups, especially in Madison. I'd love to find somebody in the capital who's got the time, be willing, and I could talk to one-to-one and say, hey, here's what I'm doing in Illinois. Here's the things you could be doing. You'd be at the state fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could go lobby the Capitol once a year. You could visit your state reps. And I heard Wisconsin's tough because it's heavy-duty Republican, right, from the top down.
Right now it is. And
it's turned purple.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. But there's still a lot of, you got the Mad City over there. It's still, a liberal hotbed.
Sure.
There's still enough that we should be active and more visible, just like you guys here. You're the minority here in town, right?
We got FFRF right there in Madison. So, it's not.
Exactly.
We were acquainted with past leadership in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And so I was just wondering where that's at. What about the other states? Are there a lot of states still missing, or are most of them on board?
They've got a dozen or more that are really active, and a few more on board. But, there's some holes and gaps, and the folks in Washington are working really hard trying to get all the states up and active. So,
and what is membership looking like at your level or even at the national level? What's the trajectory for membership into your organization?
I don't know the national level, but when I started, we had maybe 500 people in Illinois on the email action alert list. Now, Illinois has a population of like 13 million. If 22% of us, according to Pew Research, are not religious, right? That's a couple million people. It's 3 to 4 million people. Now, everybody's not going to be a secular activist. We all know that, right? But just think of the 1/10 of 1% of all that. I should have 30,000 people on a mailing list, and that's what I'm looking for. I want to get to 2,000 and 3,000. We're up to about 800 now in our efforts the last
that's
year.
Great.
But the more outreach we do, I think we can accelerate that. So, we should, our congressman should be getting a couple thousand emails when there's an important piece of legislation, not just a couple hundred. So that's what we're shooting for.
So lobbying is part, it's the big part of the work that you do. But what does membership bring to those that are helping to support you? So, if I wanted to become a member and I gave a donation or I gave the $25 for a year, what would that bring me and my community and your organization?
Okay. Besides the regular action alerts, both at state and federal level, you get there's a morning read and there's a monthly newsletter. You can get all kinds of information like that keeps you up to date on all the secular activities. They do a nice job doing that too. So
I had a question from Chicago's standpoint. This is one of the things we debate here and we discuss. Obviously, we're bringing a conference to Milwaukee, and we've been doing this for a couple of years. But why is that missing in Chicago? Why isn't
I got that written down? You took the question right up.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, man.
Great
No,
question.
Glad you brought it up.
With the amount, the millions of people in Chicago.
Yeah, what's your problem, man?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You would think someone would pull together and put something on, or an event. Doesn't even have to be a conference. It could be something.
Yeah. That's a great question. I live, 40 miles northwest of the city. I'm, just below the cheese curtain with all you guys up here. And I grew up out in the boonies, and I was out of state for about 5 years, and there were no meetup groups. There was nothing. I came back, and I started searching meetup groups, and we've got there's like a couple dozen of them within 50 miles of my house. So it's just starting. And we all ask the same thing. Why isn't there a bigger group here? Why don't we have regular secular conventions in Chicago? We just had the American Humanists, but that was like a rarity. It just doesn't happen.
One-off.
We should have, if American Atheists is in Memphis, right, you would think they'd want to come to the hub in Chicago. And I'm not sure what's going on there. I may have a better answer.
Well, the
answer
is plain. There's just simply not a team anywhere like we have here. And,
right.
Well, that's true.
We're going to continue to skyrocket.
There you go.
Well, you have
toward
people.
infamy.
Well, you can hire us out too.
As we play ice cutter, Coast Guard cutter to the secular movement here in Milwaukee, leading the way.
Yes, you are. Yeah, we've all talked about that because most of the meetup groups I belong to have only been formed in the last year or two.
Right.
And, so our grassroots effort is getting big. We had no SCA until, I took it over.
And it's just the other thing that's random is you have major media. You have Hammett Meta out there. You have the cognitive dissonance team out there. You have
Well, it's so spread out, too. Chicagoland's so big. And the groups we're talking about range from, Zion to Vernon Hills to Barrington to Orland Park to who knows where, Naperville, I'm sure, and Aurora have little groups and downtown. So it's like, how do you get? It's not easy, I tease, but it's not easy to get them all together. And we are lucky to have done what we've done and continue to do what we're doing, which include the Myth Information Conference 3 coming up soon, October 21st. We're just a couple of months away, 2.5 months to the big date, the big debate. Will be the headlining event of that conference.
Yeah, there's some contests out there. You can win free tickets.
Thanks for bringing that up. They're giving away the Scathing Atheist, giving away tickets. Why don't you tell us about that, Sean?
Yeah, Scathing Atheist is giving away tickets. If you go to their site and email them a haiku, an original haiku on Jesus, they'll pick the best ones and they'll have tickets for you. Dr. Richard Carrier is giving away 4 tickets for a team that can put together an event that would be with him. And there's details on his blog as well, so check that out. 4 free tickets available there. And we'll have some more upcoming announcements with Hemet Metas giving away tickets. Thomas Smith, Atheistically Speaking, is giving away tickets. Matt Dillahunty, Arn Ra, maybe Dan Barker, Alan Jackson from Atheist Republic. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to get some free tickets.
A Jesus haiku, man. I'm really jealous because I'm sure that I do not qualify for that contest.
No, you don't qualify.
But I'll start somebody out. Okay, out there, if you're listening, nailed to a big cross. There's your 5. It's 575 syllables in a haiku, right? So there you go. Somebody can start one out now. Don't give me any credit because they might disqualify you. But maybe I'll throw another one at you later on for a 7-syllable.
What do we get if we do a limerick instead?
Hey man, limericks are my purview as well. Man. I do have some limericks. Maybe I'll read one later about Jesus. They're not respectful. What is the reason we were talking before the show? What's the reason that the SCA doing the great work they do and being so important is so not as well known as FFRF? They got the big names.
I think when FFRF, this was their explanation, they said, when they do something, it generates press. When SCA does lobbying, who's going to hear about it? So SCA, it's our job to publicize ourselves. I think that's where it's at. We've got to let people know, because I go to a lot of meetups, and I'll be with 20 people, and maybe 2 of them have heard of Secular Coalition, but everybody's heard of FFRF. And so, and the Secular Coalition's only been around, let's say, full force about 10 years, and they didn't originally have members from the public. It was only the groups were members, I guess, when it was formed. So I think we're kind of in our infancy. They're set up in Washington, and now we're trying to do it out at the States and publicize. That's why actually it's going on right now, but the last 4 or 5 days I worked we had a booth at the McHenry County Fair, and that's a first for any secular group.
What was the response there?
Really cool. McHenry County's got like 300,000 people, and they get close to 100,000 attendants at the fair every year. So we had a lot of people walk through our building and see a secular group or talk to somebody secular for the first time ever. And we were right next to the Catholic ladies, across from the pro-life people, and the Gideons were in the next building, and they weren't happy we were there.
Yeah, I heard you had a death match right in the street with the Gideons. How'd that come out?
It was pretty cool.
Well, he's here, so.
Oh,
Gideon is?
He's Bill's here, so he you should see the other guy, right? That's funny because I never thought of the Gideons as, they exist and they do what they do, but I never think of them gathering anywhere or having like a church of their own or a booth. And like, wait, there's the Gideons as a group. I'd love to see that.
I forget the date, but they formed in Janesville. That's their headquarters.
Is that
Janesville,
right?
Wisconsin. Absolutely. I did a whole blog on them a couple months ago. I can't remember all the details, but they do county fairs and hand out their little New Testaments just like at the universities and the colleges and stuff. And so if you walk by, it's like, here, you want a New Testament? And we'd walk by and go, sorry, we're an atheist. You can't be an atheist. Yes, we are.
Another fine contribution to society from Janesville, Wisconsin. Thank you, Janesville. You suck. The Gideons. That's hilarious, man.
Yeah.
You got a book coming out?
I have a book coming out in about a month. I was hoping to walk in here and hand you one and sign you a copy. It might be worth $1.380 someday, but it's called The Arrogance of Religious Thought, and I go after religious thought that underlies all religions, condemning people to hell, child indoctrination of kids, I think all the misogyny, homophobia in the world would probably disappear if religions did, right? I don't know any secularists that are against gays anywhere. If you guys know of that group, let me know.
Right.
There's liable to be one somewhere, but no.
So it kind of felt like it was time to, let's say, focus back on how this whole thing started. And I talk a lot about the new Enlightenment movement that we're in the middle of that really kind of kicked off with Sam Harris's End of Faith in 2004. And then Dawkins and Hitchens' books came out in the next 2 years. And, everything's just taken off since then, like at the Grassroots Rebel, all the meetup groups.
How long has it been since the first Enlightenment? And then we finally,
First Enlightenment is Renaissance is like 1600s. First Enlightenment.
It's been 500 years, right?
400 years.
400 years.
16th to the 18th, 19th centuries, depending who you read.
And we still have to talk about the obvious to people.
Yeah, we do. We had such an ingrained cultural tradition that most people just don't question religion. But think about it. You talk to the average person and say, really? Do you really think you know the ultimate fate of everybody else on earth? That they're all going to burn in hell because they don't believe your religion. It doesn't matter which one it is, right? We're all going to burn in the Islamic hell, right? We're going to fry.
Yep.
And we're going to fry in the Catholics and the rest of the Christians' hell. And, what a horrible thing for people to even think of with one another. It's just an old bad habit that needs to go. And it dates from around the time of, first century BC, and it's ingrained in almost all cultures. Well, we can outgrow it.
Do you use any of your skill in developmental psychology when writing the book? Is this, one of the vantage points from which you look at your argument?
Yeah. I think so because, like I said, my interest in developmental psych is cognitive evolution, right? And I look at the things humans do whenever you see a little kid do something, when it first develops language, when it first develops whatever, you can ask the same question, when did we evolve that? Chimps don't do this, so we started it sometime. And you can look at religious thinking the same way and say, 10,000 years ago, when we were all in small tribes and you had animistic, shamanistic religions, you did not have the religions that exist today, Islam, Christianity, etc. People didn't condemn each other to hell. People didn't have this hierarchy of priests and bishops and cardinals. None of that existed. That's a new development. So you can look at religion in the same way and say, look, it's just a recent cultural habit. We don't need it any more than we need slavery or anything else. We could outgrow it. So, yeah, I think the developmental perspective really helps.
And isn't it true that before that time, the religions accepted each other? If you were part of that religion, you were going to go to that guy.
Well,
it was okay.
not always. But yeah, because in a lot of cases, especially in the ancient world, you would have gods behind an army that would go after another army that was, championing a different god. So there was still a lot of that infighting, and ours is better than yours. Ours is stronger than yours. Rome ended up taking all of the Greek gods.
I'm not saying people were happy about it, but I think in general the idea in people's minds were that all of the gods existed for the adherents of those gods.
Well, the gods,
you know what I mean?
The gods were capable of good and evil.
When you died, you were going to go to your god because that was the god that that you belonged to. And it was more there wasn't this. That's just there was only one truth.
I think
it was more. People were more able to accept that everybody had their own truth, and that was okay.
Yeah, I think
it was more pluralistic.
Yeah, the further back you go, when you get to, let's say, Neolithic times and things, the beginning of what we see as organized religion and worship and stuff. When you go back to tribal type stuff, everything was much more syncretic, where one religion would borrow from another one. Oh, you worship this god? Okay, we'll start worshiping that guy too. You don't see that as much with the modern day religions. Islam is probably the most insular religion there is. There's just no room to adopt anything from any other religion within Islam. It pollutes it. Whereas you look at Christianity, when you go to South America and go watch a Christian festival in a village, half of their local gods are incorporated into the Christian saints and everything else. And that's more normal with religious history. And it's gotten more insular as time has gone on, where now this is our religion and it doesn't mix with yours. I mean, I lived in Kentucky for a few years, and the Baptists hate the Catholics and think the Catholics aren't even Christians. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I get upset with that. There's a real disconnect, real miseducation. among believers when it
Yes.
comes to other faiths.
Yes.
And it's upsetting to
Yes.
Even within their own faith.
me. The evangelical Christians don't understand that there's other Christians. They think they're the only Christians and Catholics are something else.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like
Right,
you wouldn't
exactly.
even exist if it wasn't for the Catholic Church. You'd have there would be no
Right.
evangelicals today.
Yeah, they-
So it's like
They might have had them, but they would have been very small and
they don't understand.
obsolete.
They don't understand Protestantism. They don't get what that is. They came to Christianity after the
Right.
Yeah, but even within the faith, though, like in Islam or in Christianity, they don't even understand Jesus is in Islam or the prophets are in Islam or all of the Moses and all of these same characters are in Islam.
right.
They think it's a completely different religion.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a graduate student in Kentucky, evangelical trained, very bright, sharp person, yet said to me as we were doing a study, well, Catholics aren't really Christians, are they? just what you said.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
Experienced
just a
it.
lack of
I'm just like,
education.
yeah, and
Nice.
as soon as I gave her a book, actually from a Christian author, and that showed all the different denominations, she had no clue of Christian history whatsoever.
No.
Yeah, most people don't, and they only know what they're told as
Yeah,
a child in a lot of
More-
cases, and they just regurgitate that same misinformation over and over.
more of that child indoctrination. It's amazing.
Right?
Where do you stand on mythicism itself? Are you a big mythicist guy? Do you think
I think it's the most likely explanation, very much so. I read both Carrier's big tome books, and I've heard him speak a couple times. And the more you read, it makes more sense. Because even somebody like Bart Ehrman that you're going to have up here speaking, he's down to just the nubs.
Right.
Jesus existed, but you can't trust anything else from the gospel. And he's right. And it's like, then you read Carrier's and others' explanations, and it's like, what's more probable? And it's like, yeah, it's like Zeus, Osiris, whatever, writing a story that this god spent some time on Earth. That was a common practice. And yeah, I pretty much in the mythicist camp.
Why is Ehrman standing by those nubs so hard? That's what I'm dying to find out on October
It'd
21st.
be excellent to ask him.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, that will be
Yes,
interesting.
But yeah, exciting times coming up. And also, have you heard about the Batman and Jesus movie that we're all very excited to be involved in?
I have, in fact, Sean and I were talking about it a little bit before. First time I got exposed to any of your video stuff like that is when I came up last year for your conference, and you played one of the Holy Shit episodes, and it was hilarious. It was excellent. So I've seen a couple on YouTube's, and the Batman Jesus thing promises to be something else.
We're lucky to have a up-and-coming filmmaker as part of our crew, and we're all really excited to be
Yeah.
our little parts in it and our little producer bits.
Pink,
and
thank you to Pink Lady Productions for giving us the entire budget for the movie, which
Nice.
is no small feat. So
Nice.
And again, all of what we do is thanks to the grace and kindness of our sponsors and our benefactors,
Yep.
we appreciate that, and we need more. So do go to mythicistmilwaukee.com and consider buying a membership. $75 a year gets you some perks, or $8 a month, an easy $8 a month. You don't even notice. It comes out for Netflix. You can put another $8 on there. Easy.
Yeah, there you go.
To help us keep doing what we're doing. Which includes Myth of the Day. You got one for us? Are you ready? You need some more minutes?
Yeah, no, I'm ready over here.
Go for it.
So this one here finds the parallels between Noah's Ark and the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is a classic, so
Nice,
I am bringing
nice.
it back. Now, we need to look no further for a pre-Christian source than the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest surviving works of literature written in 2600 BC. This story talks about a great flood commanded by God, an ark with saved animals upon it, and even the release and return of a bird, all holding in common with the biblical story among many other similarities. The Epic of Gilgamesh was written in cuneiform in Assyrian and Babylonian clay tablets and is one of the most interesting poems in the world. It is of great antiquity, and inasmuch as a fragment of a Sumerian deluge, text is extant. It would appear to have had its origin with the Sumerians in a remote period, perhaps the 4th millennium or even earlier. 3 tablets of it exist written in Semitic, Akkadian, which cannot be much later than 2000 BC. So a few of these parallels between the Genesis flood and the Epic of Gilgamesh flood. It was caused by man's sin. It was intended for all mankind. The order was sent down by the gods The protagonists were ordered to build a boat. There was one door on the boat and at least one window. Human passengers on it were family members. There were all kinds of land animals on it. The means of the flood was caused by heavy rains and the release of a bird to find land. Ark landing spot was a mountain. There was a sacrifice after the flood, and there was a blessing after the flood. And that is our myth of the day.
Now, you guys educate me. You guys are the researchers and the smart guys in the crew. Was the Epic of Gilgamesh more akin to a historical poem, or was it actually tied to an ancient religion?
The Epic of the flood story is part. It's just one part of this great text.
Right.
What we have seen is this piece of this story, this great epic story that must have meant a lot to the people back then because it was written on these huge clay tablets. It was that the Noah's Ark story was pulled from that. Now, regarding whether or not the Epic of Gilgamesh or this entire story where this flood is involved in, whether or not that was looked at religiously, that I'm unsure of, and I don't think so.
Well, you had the Enuma Elish, you had the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you had all these ancient texts that had many stories that you'll see, including the flood stories that you see today. So they were a part of a greater works. Also in ancient Egypt, you had the pyramid texts, which told stories, and you also had the coffin texts, which told these myths. So you see it. I mean, obviously this is pre-writing, so it's not like it's in the Bible, but there is a written form of these stories that still exist today. And what Fritz is talking about there, the Epic of Gilgamesh that was found on a tablet. So we do have those writings, and this is where ISIS was destroying a lot of the ancient artifacts that existed as well, because I'm sure they understand the importance of these. Why go after the ancient historical religious texts and potteries and all that? I mean, they know this stuff predates what they have, and destroying that keeps people
ignorant. No one can discover it.
Absolutely.
Let me add this one piece here for you, though, Rob. When you ask if my understanding of your question is the Epic of Gilgamesh kind of like the Bible?
Does it apply exactly to an old religion?
It doesn't, but what you do see in the story is that the ideas of humans being obedient to the gods,
right,
and also that religion, just in general, is a part of the everyday life in Gilgamesh's culture.
Right, and
so it's in there, but it's in terms of did the people like real life society did they look at this text and say this is my religious text? No, but within the text there are those key pieces that make it okay, you got to believe in the gods, and wow, religion is really a big part of this character's life.
Yeah, and it gave people different, like Easter being celebrated in antiquity. Everyone knew the story, and they knew the practices that were behind it. The winter solstice, summer solstice, all these stories told people how to, celebrate or what their traditions were in their specific culture. So
I always thought Gilgamesh sounded like a town in Ireland, don't you? Hey, let's go to Gilgamesh and have a pie cherry. Right? What kind of name is that?
That was pretty good.
The Epic of Gilgamesh.
But I just want to get back to Bill. So Bill, tell us kind of how you got into this. How you got, we all have our own stories, how we got interested in the secular movement, if you will. Like, what's your backstory?
Probably left the faith about 7th, 8th grade. I was raised Catholic. Nothing real heavy. We weren't very religious in our house. So I left it pretty early. I read Bertrand Russell and things like that through my adult life, but I wasn't doing any secular activism. When I went back to get my PhD in 2005 already at Northern Illinois University, there was a group forming there, one of the first secular student association groups, or alliance groups. I always do that. Sorry, SSA. We were like number 75. And that's what got me started in secular activism, because I really started to see what was going on. I didn't have a bad religious experience. I just thought it was nonsense. And that's when, Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris and all those books came out. We wouldn't even say the word atheist out loud when we formed the group, right? And that's just barely a decade ago. So I've kind of moved along with the movement and gotten more involved every year.
It's excellent. Do you ever see any discussion on the college campuses on religion or atheism, or do you have any stories to tell with that?
One of the things we did at Northern with our group, and now the group has really taken off again, they've had some great speakers the last couple of years, is one of our guys did a tour in Iraq, and he saw sectarian violence like we can't imagine up close and personal. So his goal was to get all the religious groups on campus talking to one another. That was his main push.
Like an interfaith program?
And they'd come to our meetings, and we'd have 40 people in the room from about every faith you can imagine talking to one another. So it was pretty interesting. That's, if I can expand on that story, it's in the book. But that's when I got my first real taste of real strong religious divisiveness. It was charming. I hadn't been teaching in Kentucky yet, right? Go around the room, 40 people are all introducing themselves. And we got Buddhists, Muslims, we got everybody, right? Pagans, atheists. And a guy introduces himself as Catholic, and he's from the suburbs, right? Finishes. Kid next to him looks at him, says, well, I'm an evangelical, and looks at him and says, you're not a real Christian. Right in front of 40 strangers.
Really?
Yeah, it was great. I'm just like, you got to be kidding. I'm unbelieving scum, right? I'm fucking unbelieving scum. I don't have any morals, right? But I wouldn't dare do that to a stranger in front of 40 other people. And this kid just dumped on him just like that.
Wow. Yeah. So the evangelical told the Catholic he's not a real Christian?
You're not a real Christian.
Wow.
Looked right in the eye, just stopped him mid-sentence. And you're just like, holy moly. And we're trying to do interfaith, come let us
kind of build dialogue, right?
Kind of have a come to Jesus meeting together, right? That kind of blew the mood of that, didn't it?
The arrogance of religious thought.
That got me on the path.
Book says it all. That's just that guy has the conviction of his faith, and he's proud and loud, and it just...
It's what they taught him. He doesn't know any better. It's what they taught him.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's fantastic. That's... And again, someone that doesn't know the history.
Yeah.
Incredible.
They get left out completely of what really goes on. And that's why I like seeing what you guys are doing, what we're doing, secular student groups, whatever. Everybody's out educating, right? Because the subtitle of my book is Information Kills Religion. And it really does. When people find out, if they actually, our truism is, you want to make an atheist, just read the Bible. Read the whole thing and compare the stories, and that'll make you a non-believer quicker than anything. Same thing is true, I'm hearing from the ex-Muslims about the Quran. So education is the key, information. Everything we're doing to bring this stuff out is where it's at. It's great.
So it sounds like you're an optimist in terms of the future.
I am, because I've seen it change so much. When I grew up as a kid in the 60s, you wouldn't say the atheist word, and the only atheists we knew of were Madeleine Murray O'Hair.
Yeah. She was the devil in
that
most
Life
households.
magazine called her the most hated woman in America,
Yeah.
right? And then the other atheists were Stalin and Mao and Nikita Khrushchev, right? That's what you would hear. That was the public perception. Man, it's a different world today, so I'm optimistic as hell, and it's growing.
Yeah, it's all about normalizing the term atheist and secularist and whatever. And, that's one of the challenges one of the things we're trying to work on is bringing more people that do view themselves as atheists with the followers, comedians, entertainers, things like that, musicians, to help normalize it. Because if people see someone that they respect and they respect their work, or they, like what they do, and they come out as supporting it, I think that will help those that are either apathetic or those that are on the fence.
What makes me optimistic, as well as being a college instructor, I see a new group of 18 and 19-year-old freshmen every year, right? And even the ones that are Christian and identify as, I'm Catholic, I'm evangelical Christian, they are not their grandparents' Christians. They don't care if you're gay or not.
Right,
they don't care about your sexual practices. The Catholics all practice birth control. It's really watered down again from a generation ago.
Don't you think the LGBT movement has done so much for the atheist movement? I can't.
Yes.
It's really
they led the way.
That's just it. And every young person knows now a gay person, and they're okay with it.
Yeah.
And that's just dealt such a blow to religion in my mind.
The other thing is again information. When I first started teaching psych 10 years ago, gender issues were a little paragraph at the end of the developmental chapter. Now, every psych textbook the last 3-4 years has a whole chapter on gender and sexuality. So even intro to psych students, 18, 19-year-olds, are getting the latest science on gender and sexuality. And it's pretty hard to hold on to any religious nonsense after you really learn, that LGBTI, all these people are just normal people and it's normal variation. So that's been huge too.
I got an interesting question for the group here, and we'll go to current issues. So obviously Islam and Islamist extremism has been owning the news internationally. And in my opinion, the presidential candidates have not been doing a good job of pointing out the actual problem. They kind of tiptoe around it unless you're Trump, who you come out and say ridiculous things about it and just lie about it. What your ways of attacking it would be. So at at Hillary Clinton's last convention, they had a family, a mother and a father of a fallen U.S. soldiers who actually were Muslim. So he was a Muslim and he died in combat. So she had his parents speak to the convention. I was wondering what your guys' thought was on that. Was that handled correctly? What could she have done differently? Is that a good message to send? Did you guys see it?
Yeah, I do see it. And it was a huge uproar, especially with essentially the argument then turned into Trump attacking war heroes. But your question.
But I'm just saying that
what?
my question is, what do you think of that having two Muslim parents of a fallen soldier speak at the convention?
I think it's absolutely fine with me. Really, inviting them was really a big way. Not only just inclusiveness, bringing in different cultures to speak about how they've all given to America, but it was, quite frankly, the Democrats' way of attacking the vitriol that Trump has been stating for the longest time about Muslims. I wouldn't have been surprised if, right after them, they had a Mexican family come up and speak about how their, son or daughter gave their life up as well, for America.
I did not see it. Did you? Is your point that it was a pandering?
That's my question is because there's a couple ways to look at it.
They did it on purpose to point out that there are Muslims who are fighting Muslim extremism.
That too
could be.
Yeah, I think it was an excellent combat to the whole Trumpism approach, and they were Muslim immigrants. The guy that died in the Iraqi war, their son, I think they immigrated when he was 2. And the father made the point that, if Trump was around back then, we never would have been here, and this guy wouldn't have sacrificed himself in front of a suicide bomber to save, a bunch of his fellow service people. True war hero, whatever religion he is, right?
Yeah.
And so to put those people up there and say, look, everything Trump is saying is out to lunch. I do agree with you that the presidential candidates haven't been addressing Islamic terrorism much. I sort of have a different view of all that. I think we have to pull them to start talking. Like, that's our job as secularists, to point out. And Hillary actually used the term, I think, Islamic jihadism a couple weeks ago.
She didn't say Islamic. She said extremist jihadist group.
That was in a speech a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, she never said Islamic. And that's part of the issue. And so for me, and we typically don't get political on the show at all, but it's
right.
It's very concerning for me because I have, on one hand, you have a party that doesn't want to. They're tiptoeing around it. They're bringing out people to act as positive reinforcement for Islam, which is great. You can show the good in Islam, but instead of coming out and actually challenging the ideology and the messaging behind it, and then on the other hand, you have someone that comes out in response to these poor parents who lost their son for the country. He doesn't even address them at all, and he actually says, well, it's interesting the woman didn't speak at all, and instead of saying, this is a terrible situation, I really feel for the family, he didn't do any of that, and he just goes off on pointing out how the mother didn't speak at all.
Yeah, that was that was how he came back. That was his attack.
Exactly.
His retaliation was, notice that the woman didn't say anything, which, obviously then gets back to some of the things that we see inside of that culture.
Right.
Her response was a normal response. No, she just didn't want to speak.
She was too nervous.
It was a tough time. Here's an interesting thing about the Khizr Khan, who's the father, the guy.
Yeah.
the Khan family. He is a supposedly, according to some sources, a Sharia expert. He's a lawyer.
Interesting.
And Breitbart, which we know is a very conservative wing, a news source, quotes him, Khizr Khan, as the headline for their article, which seems very interesting as well, which could then take this conversation somewhere else. Khizr Khan believes the Constitution, quote, must always be subordinate to the Sharia.
Right. Interesting.
So now that
if that is accurate,
else,
if that's accurate, it's very, and then that's the problem that I have. Instead of getting to the baseline of the issue, if we start catering and pandering to people, how, when is enough? The UK is struggling with the Sharia court system. We'll have Miriam Namazi on the show in a couple of weeks to talk to that. I can't wait for that interview. But it was just interesting to see, kind of like the stark difference between how the Democrats are handling this and how the Republicans are handling this. And that was my question.
I find it all distasteful usury, the entire political process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I take a cynical view. Hillary only dragged those people out there to try to win for her,
right?
Not because she gave a shit about them.
That was
it. You know what I mean?
That's why I stated that it was their way of attacking all the stuff that Trump's been saying.
Right.
They essentially used,
right.
A dead soldier who happened to be of Muslim background.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sadly, I have not paid enough attention to the political scene. Well, it's coming down.
Well, we typically don't get into politics, so it's good.
Yeah,
you don't
I'm unclear on if we're supposed to.
We're not
prohibited from doing so.
On our podcast, we can do whatever we want.
Because we're not a non-for-profit, really, are we?
Well, we are 501c3 pending, but
it's still pending.
We're on our podcast right now.
I understand.
I personally, again, stay away from too much politics on air.
Exactly. That's why.
And we didn't say which side was better. We just brought both of them out.
Right. Yeah, we'll leave that to.
So we stayed pretty neutral in that, I think.
We'll leave that to Homo. He can comment.
There you go.
On his Twitter.
There you go.
Speaking of Twitter, follow us at Mythicist MKE. I am at Robinero. Brian doesn't tweet, so forget about him. But you can communicate with the show that way. Give us your suggestions, comments, good or bad. We want to hear them. You got any final thoughts, Bill, as we look forward to the release of your book, which has got a great title, The Arrogance of Religious Thought. Give us a real date, man, and not a fake. The end of the world is coming. Maybe Jesus is going to return, and I'm going to have to recalculate the day. When's the damn book coming out, man?
End of this month, first part of September. One or the other. Can't give you any tighter.
I like it.
It's kind of like Jesus, Was it 6 BC? Was it 4 AD? Come on.
That's what I'm getting
perfect.
at,
4 BC, 6 AC.
Right.
Which, it's 10 years kind of spread in there. What do you want?
It's a perfect analogy right there.
And who's your publisher? Where can we find it once it's out?
You'll be able to find it on my website, www.wearedone.org.
www.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you guys this. You don't have to say the www anymore.
No, that's
just
true.
for future reference.
Wearedone.org. Thank you. That is kind of silly when you think about it.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. That's where you'll be able to find it.
Interwebs 101 by Sean Fraser.
HTTP.
No, colon, backslash. No, none of that. It's all gone.
Well, thanks for joining us. He's
Thank you.
Chicago chapter president of Illinois, of the Secular Coalition for America.
Yep.
The main lobbying group in Washington. He's Bill Zingrone.
And
Thank you.
He'll be at the conference in October.
Of course he will.
Meet him in person.
He's a great supporter of our efforts, and we really appreciate it. So, again, thanks for driving up, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Another great show.
Good luck with everything. All right.
All righty.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Antonio, who do we got next week on the show?
Next week, we have John D. Webster. He's the author of 10 Decisions I Could Have Made Better Than God and other audacious atheist articles.
Author and comedian.
That sounds like the arrogance of atheist thought.
Yeah,
right
he's
there.
a funny.
That's awesome.
He's a funny guy. So, author and comedian John D. Webster.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. The Mythicist Milwaukee Show is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasek. Associate producer Melanie Lawson, engineer Jason Lawson, Mythmeister Antonio Blandone, researcher Kristen Whitaker-Hood. Closing theme written and performed by Shelley Siegel. On behalf of co-host Brian Edward and the entire team, I'm Rob Moore reminding you to keep it safe and keep it secular.